Okay. But we want to just to have one hour of discussion and closing. So how we start this today? Just I ask to Diego and I remember. Sorry, but I don't remember the name of Pontremoli. They can. Simona, okay, because I'm missing the name here. Simona Solvi, okay. They can just present briefly themselves and say about Pontremoli and their experience. Very shortly after, we will have a round of questions about. And the second one will be Matteo Maggio. And there is anybody else that has experience about understanding, because the thematics of today is understanding participation in rural and highland areas and the problems of engage the stakeholders. No? So we are starting with these main thematics, and we start to suggest some of the possible solution in the multi-stakeholder environments. But because the 22 of May, we will go speaking more in deep about tools and strategies for effective participation and conflict management. So, because all the time that we have to put together different stakeholders, potentially there are some conflicts that can happen. So we are trying to understand how should be the first steps and how we should walk through our work into the areas. And we can, and after we have some question to go on. So Diego Mariani and Simona and Matteo. Okay. Short presentation.
I can start. I'm Simona Solvi. Nice to meet you all. I'm the president of the association Start Work in Pontremoli, which takes the name from the project that we started in 2020 in Pontremoli, which is an inland area in Tuscany. The main goal of the project is repopulation of this area through remote workers. Maybe later we'll have time to go in details.
As for myself, I moved to a remote village nearby Pontremoli exactly in 2020. And back then I did not know about the Start Work in Pontremoli had started. A friend of mine told me about this new project happening in the area where I decided to move back precisely because my father is originally from that place. And at present, I'm a member of the association that Simona has mentioned. And I try to support the project whenever I have the chance. And of course, back then in 2020, when I moved to an area when I was a stranger, I had no contacts, I had no reference in the area. To when I came to know and I came in touch with the organization, it was a great point of entry in the territory for me and for many others, as Simona will surely tell you about later on in the meeting. Thank you.
Sorry, my turn. So as a short presentation, I'm Matteo. I'm an architect. I'm actually working in a construction company. And in my free time, I started these cultural associations called Animare Venezia, mostly 6, maybe 7 years ago. I started because I was bored after I finished my academic personal roots. And I wanted to take back to my territory everything that I learned and I experienced in my travel and experiences. So with a little group of friends, we started this process to do cultural activities in our territory. And since that time, we do cultural projects for the Venetian territory.
Perfect. So I'm Fabio Malfatti. I'm the president of Centro Ricerche EtnoAntropologiche. I'm a researcher and environmental anthropologist, I call myself at this time. And I worked with different communities, but I choose for this session the Comunità del Bosco del Monte Pisano. Was a project about the change in the law of Tuscany forestry to create these communities for manage the land, abandon the land, the areas into the mountains. When you have a change in the laws, there is a possibility, but how should we in matter to put people together? So after 1 year of work, we founded the Comunità del Bosco of Monte Pisano, and the organization start to work, and we had a lot of conflict inside because there were different point of view. So the Comunità del Bosco del Monte Pisano today it's still working. It's growing, but has some, because it's over more than 11,000 hectares, has not one clear objective, but it's the development of one area. So it's more complex, and it's difficult to keep together the different stakeholders that sometimes they don't agree with the strategies that the organization take. But there was a long and strong participation process. This was funded by Italian government. Okay, so I think we can start to understand how we engage or we organize these really different communities and what they have in common, which are the difference, and just which are the principal difficulties that we found into organize these communities and to keep them together. I don't know, I follow the same order. So Simona, please.
Okay. So our project, as I mentioned, started in 2020 after the first wave of the pandemic. And at first, the claim of the project was if Pontremoli doesn't offer jobs, then jobs will come to Pontremoli. With the idea in mind of the two founders to have remote workers that can join and live and work in our area, so Pontremoli and in general Lunigiana area in North Tuscany. So the idea was to attract and to together these remote workers from all over the world, Italy, but also the world in general, and to have them as a mean of repopulation of this area, and to have them integrated with the local community, of course. So people started to come. I'm one of the remote workers that decide to move to Pontremoli in 2021, and then I decided to stay, of course. And now in these 4 years, we attracted more or less 100 persons, at least for 1 month, and 30 decide to be new residents in Lunigiana. So to us, this is quite a good result. What do we do in practical? First, the people who are interested in coming in Lunigiana, usually they write to us, they will connect to each other in order to explain the project, explain what they will find here as services, the community, the locals, and so on. And then we suggest to visit us just for one day or one weekend to see the area and to appreciate all the local way of living. And then the first step usually is to live just for a short period of time, just to comprehend if this choice could be a suitable choice for the person to combine living and working from Pontremoli. And so most of the people spend from 1 month to 6 months, more or less, as a trial, let's say, to understand if this kind of life it could be good for them. And then if they decide to stay permanently or for a longer period, we try to help them with the accommodation, also for the short time period, but especially for the longer time, for a longer period. We try to, because it's not easy to find a suitable accommodation. We have the competition of touristic accommodation, so this is quite a critical issue for us. And then the most important pillar of this project is the community itself. So the community of remote workers that join Lunigiana, and also another critical but also challenging issue is the integration between the the remote workers community and the local community, in order to have a proficient exchange between a mindset, a cosmopolitan mindset, a more innovative mindset, which is mainly in remote workers, and a well-being, well-living mindset, which is most of the local community. So this is another challenge, I would say, not a critical issue, but a challenge. Yes, this is very in very few lines what we do in Pontremoli.
Okay, thank you, Simona. I forgot to say that this meeting has automatic translation subtitle. So if somebody has some problem to follow in English, you can just activate subtitle and activate your preferred language. It's automatic translation, so it's not perfect, but it's enough to help to understand. Or you can use subtitle in English to learn better, to understand better the words. So say that, I make the same question to because if to Diego, just to have another point of view about the same experience, because the experience of Pontremoli is very interesting, because it's one of our key studies, because they have success into the integrating the newcomers, the dropped one, the rained one. It depends on the place where people, it's called in different ways. So people that arrive in the community is not born there, and the local community. So it's an example. So if Diego wants to say, speak about his point of view, you are welcome. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have much to add to what Simona said. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm a member. I don't have any active role in the managing of the organization, but surely I can bring my personal point of view, my testimony about my experience with the association. At the beginning, it was key to have a place to work. As a remote worker myself, the main reason I got in touch with the association is because they, with a lot of effort, they set up a place to work together, a co-working, and that was very helpful at the beginning to have a place to work in Pontremoli and to get to know people from different backgrounds. And that is, of course, a challenge, as Simona said, I observe I see the potential embedded in this encounter between people who are well-rooted in Pontremoli because they've been born and raised in Pontremoli, and people who come from abroad. They may have a variety of experiences. They all have an international background. So it is very interesting to see how these two worlds encounters. Sometimes they collide. They may collide, but of course there is a lot of potential in it. And I think this is a challenge for the organization to somehow mediate between these two different experiences. And something else. As Fabio, you told us to speak about the challenges. Something else that I see start working Pontremoli is now 5 years old. So we may say that the startup phase of the organization has ended and it is growing into maturity. So of course that comes with a lot of questions for the organization. Where do we want to go? Simona said we started with a clear vision. Repopulate the area, bring remote workers to the area so that we have jobs that Pontremoli doesn't have naturally, and we bring them from outside. The people come, the association grows, and now we have many different point of views. Of course, there is this goal of repopulation that never cease to be actual. At the same time, there are other issues coming up in the life of the organization, and how to carry on different visions and goals for an organization that is now 5 years old is an interesting experience to see. I mean, to observe. So this, I would say, is another challenge that the organization is facing. And that's all for now.
Thank you very much, Diego. And now we move to Venice, from the islands into the CREAs, to the islands into the sea, and Matteo Maggiò.
Thank you, Fabio. Yeah, I will tell you a little bit different stories. I understand, but in some things, I think we can find something that we have in common, or at least some value that we believe in both. With our association, the main goal was to, at least at the beginning, to organize a TEDx event in Venice. For who don't know, this kind of format is a big conference that started in the US maybe 40 years ago, and grow up and become a really, really important event in all around the world. This kind of format started to be spread all over the world and start to become a reference for our local communities. So when we started, we had the license. I had the license for the Mestre community, that is the hinterland area of the Venetian territory. So when we started, there was since the beginning this goal to try to keep together this different soul of the Venetian community that is as many big cities, but I would say as many cities in Italy. Is very divided itself, not only in a geographical way, but also in social way, in economical way, depending by so many factors that, of course, is not easy to engage and to have in common with other realities. But when we started as a little group of friends that try to organize cultural activities and a cultural event such a TEDx in this area, our only goal was to really take the best ideas for our community and try to do something together. So there was this situation where, of course, we know each other, but we didn't know the public that will be interested to this kind of events. We enter in contact and we literally create this new community interested in these ideas that we take from not only the Venetian area, but also from Italy, and in the later years also from foreign countries. And the only goal was to create a nice atmosphere where people can join the venue that we propose, entering in contact with our community that was not made only by us as a team that create these events, but also a strong network that we create in these years of companies, institutions, other cultural associations, but also professionals, and also students, normal people that wanted to join this new community that was grow up in these years. We had, as everybody, a strong impact with the pandemic also, because just 1 year after we create this project, we were of course blocked for our cultural activities. So we have to find a new way to work each other for create these events, but also for engage with our community. So since the beginning, we create this kind of workflow that still in our days continue online to be more smart and effectively in our process. But at least 1 times per month, we try to keep in touch in a real place in Mestre or in Venice, that is the hinterland and the historical center. All our events try in its intention to design a real point of context for our community that, as I said before, is very various. So it's not easy to put together a big part of the Venetian tourist in the historical part with the people that live the city, that is very different in economic aspect, social aspect, but also for age, gender, and interest. So we move in this kind of very diversity context, and we try to find a nice way to keep everything together, to work with this kind of institution and company and people that are interested to be part of this community. Of course, it's not easy, as all the participatory process, but I think we are trying our best. And since the beginning of our project, now we start to create other kind of project different from the TED format that, of course, is very famous itself. So it's created this sort of brand that we can trust and value and work everybody in. But nowadays we start to do other kind of format and events, also thanks to this network that we create in times, thanks to our community.
Thanks, Matteo. So we are trying to how do you say it, a different point of view into find connection and differences. So I think it's more useful for this discussion to introduce another point of view, because the three of us, we are speaking about Italian areas, different problems. No, Pontremoli has the problem of depopulation. Venice have the problem of over-tourism. And I ask to Nikki Wills to present her experience. She has a lot of experience, and maybe she can speak about Africa and how was her experience to involvement of community.
Right, first of all, please forgive me, my camera's not working. Just to set the context, I was working in South Africa under the new democracy, so just post 1994, when apartheid was gone and a newly democratic government was in place. And they had introduced a concept called the People's Housing Programme to try and rehouse much of the population, because housing was at crisis levels at those times because of the apartheid policies. I was at the time working for a research institute in South Africa, and as a team of sociologists, architects, of which I was the architect, we had engineers and sanitation experts going into deep rural areas in South Africa. And one of the things that we were looking to do, because with part of the People's Housing process, there was a 15,000 Rand grant available to every family who needed to build a house. And some rural communities have contacted our sociologist and explained that they would like to try and access these funds through self-building. And they're using traditional materials. So we actually went through to the community to try and meet and things. There were a huge number of issues at that point because of the apartheid, what happened during the apartheid era. The trust of white people from Black rural communities was absolutely zero. That was possibly the most difficult aspect we had to overcome. Also, for me, one of the most devastating impacts of apartheid was when we went into villages, we were told, just tell us what we need. We have no idea about anything, just tell us. And for me, that was criminal, because that was, I think, the impetus for Sadie and myself to really start developing a more participatory process, working with communities to actually empower them. And between the pair of us, and luckily she was a Black woman and she was the one, we all have to give credit for getting us access into these communities. And so we worked with them very, very slowly. Sadie went to meet them on her own, explained everything in their native tongue. And then she came back. We'd been given the permission by the chief of there were about 5 or 6 chiefs of villages. And it's a very, very strong hierarchy. So unless you get through the chief, you're not going to be able to deal with anyone. Anyway, she spent a few weeks. We then were able to come in and actually, first of all, start investigating their traditional technologies, understanding the dynamics of the community, because most of the male population was migrant labor. They were going off to work in the cities, basically leaving the older women and the children in the village. And, things like classrooms and everything were what they wanted to build. And they wanted to use the savings from the People's Housing Fund to be able to develop community facilities. And it was a very long process. It took about 6 or 7 months, but we did quite a number of things in terms of creative design. We addressed the community, you know, asking them and empowering them to be able to, with blocks and all sorts of weird and wonderful materials, start actually shaping their communities, what it looked like, what facilities they needed. And it was a very enriching process. And I mean, our specialist engineer helped them identify where the best soils were to build, but also by modernizing the technology of earth bricks and plaster through the addition of concrete. And because they were saying they spent so much time remodeling their houses and replastering because of the climate. So that was what they were interested in. There was a whole technological aspect plus the social aspect. Anyway, we worked with one particular village. We ended up being able to build them a community centre with educational facilities inside it. And we were on the position, we had started speaking to national government and regional government to start addressing their concerns about communities building for themselves. We did get permission to go ahead and speak to the Northern Province Premier and move forward like that. However, my part had to come to a very tragic end because I was about a month from giving birth to my first child and I had to leave the project at that moment. But one or two of the provinces in South Africa did actually really move forward with addressing communities wanting to work for themselves.
It's really interesting because this is very similar to the experience I had in South America, where, but we can take some lessons for our work here because it's not so easy to ask to people what did they need. So we have two projects that know that they start with an idea and start to integrate with the community, try to understand how they can connect to the local community and be. And we have another type of project that try to help with the needs of the community, and it's not that easy to connect. So I will go just to the second question, and I am asking to the listener to prepare for questions, because now you have to ask a few minutes, you have to ask to us, or better to the speakers, questions, no? Because it's a round table, and I have some okay. So the first things I will ask to you, to all your four, is which are the secrets ingredients you think in your project give the change, give something interesting, your the action, the idea that changed something, that helped you. Simona, Diego, Matteo, and Miki después.
Okay, in my opinion, one key aspect of our project is that it was started from a group of friends who belongs to Pontremoli. So they well know the situation, the actual problems of the area, and what and their idea was just an intuition and a proposal to start to do something different to address one big issue, which is the population, as I said. And also the fact that the founders are from this area help the integration between the remote workers who arrive from all over Italy and world, and the local community, which at first could be a little bit I don't know how to say, scary from the coming of international people. So but the fact that the main sponsor and the founder also of the project are local, it could be of very help to integrate and to introduce new people. Also, another point, key point in my opinion, is the community itself, because as Diego mentioned before, our municipality now has realized with our help a co-working space, but the space itself would not be sufficient to promote the project. But the community is the real focal point of the project. It's what enabled the project to have some impact in the area and also to obtain some results. I say that because only the space, we have seen other municipalities that start a project more or less with the same intention to attract people, but they start with the physical the physical location, the physical space, but then it's not automatic that people come just for work in a place. What is the main difference with the other projects is that we have this very strong community, and also the hope and the, I don't know how to say, promessa to connect local with newcomers, and this is a challenge, as I said before, but this is also the main point of our project.
Okay, sorry, but I have some problem with my background, and please, Diego, and after Matteo and Nick. Thanks.
Yeah.
Can I go before you, Diego, please?
Sure. Go ahead.
Thanks, because I have to go in a few minutes. Sorry, guys. I feel very close to what Simona says about her reality. I feel also our let's say secret is having a strong inner team that is local, or at least have a strong relation with the local machine and our community and our territory. But I think if I have to select something that is our strength, is for sure diversity, because as a community that creates itself, let's say in years and time, we try ourselves how to work together, even if we are different people with different ages, with different gender, different interests and approach to make things. So nobody of us is expert in create cultural events, but we became it together. So this diversity really, I think, created the let's say secret sauce of if there is a success in our activities. But I can feel when we do our events that community really feel that is made for them, because we are part of it. We created in our diversity, So there is I feel this sense of wants to contribute to this local community that we are part of, and I feel we share this kind of common sense, for our territory, that make us as a glue in all our activities, in all our events and in all the projects that we do together. And I think this is very important because it's a sort of it's a sort of way of granting the good of our project for because it's a volunteer project. So all of us has its own interest, its own work, but when we do this together, is for our community. So it makes us stronger, and also I think very in a certain way. We create a sort of trust for the network of realities as institution or other association, or also people that interested in our project for our real goal. No, so this is I wanted to share it with you.
Okay, you have to leave at 19.
Yeah, I will remain connected as long as I can, but I will continue to listen to you.
Okay. Can you, the last question, it's just something that maybe you already have said, but just to make another time to Matteo, so he can be, and it will be one of the questions for you. So first we spoke about the secrets, and now which are the main difficult you found? The challenge, the big difficulty you found in your work?
I think this diversity could also be a problem in some times. For example, the fact that we are not all of us are expert in doing the things that we do together. Sometimes we need to find some professional to working with that, of course, has other kind of approach and interest in compared to our that we are volunteer. So it's not always easy to work together, no, comparing these two kind of approach to the things. Our one is directly connected to the community, to the people, and of course not all the company has this kind of value and share this vision for the community. And of course not all the professional and not all the people know how to work well with the people. In our process is completely participational project. So we decided everything together. So we have discussion on everything about the topics, about the speakers, about the logistic, about the partner, about the artistic project of our events. So everything needs to be discussed. And not all the people, I think, our day are ready to, compare his opinion in a, very light way, in a very I would say peacefully, no, because our day is quite difficult sometimes to share our opinion and keep it in listening to other people and try to create something together is not always easy, but it is possible if we are here, I think, no?
Okay, thank you, Matteo. After, if you can just open the mic if there is a need, maybe. Okay, I will not ask to you. So thank you for the moment. So we got with the first question that was the secret ingredients. Now that from the point of view for Diego of a person that was involved in this process, now from the subject point of view. So which was for you the secret ingredient that you said, okay, that's the wonderful thing that I discovered?
Yeah, as I said at the beginning, I came to know about this project once I was living already in the area. A friend told me about it. And since part of my job for the Movimento Mezzopieno is to write articles on a magazine on constructive journalism and good news, I decided to interview the founders of the project. And so I got in touch with them, and I met this original group of friends, the founders of the project. So I wanna I want to quote Simona on this and say that the fact that the project was started by some friends doing this in their free time, as the Venetian experience told us, so doing on a volunteer basis, I think that is a strong ingredient in the success of the project. And I want to mention two words here. The one is trust. Nikki said that talking about the white community, the way they were looking at the black people living in South Africa after '94. I would say, well, in Italian, in our area, we have a word to call people who come from outside, foreigners. And that word in Italian in our area is foresta, foresto. If you are a non-Italian speaker, you can hear the sound in it. There is forest, people who come from the forest, and that tells a lot of the level of trust that you have towards people coming from a different place. No, I say that because I live in a small valley nearby Pontremoli, where this trust is real. I mean, it's something you want to deal with if you come from outside. The fact that the organization still today is run partially by people from Pontremoli helps a lot in merging these two words. There is one of the projects, one of the cultural initiatives of Start Work in Pontremoli is an aperitivo that is held every 2-3 months in a brewery, in a local brewery in Pontremoli. And when I take part of this in this aperitivo, I notice the way that people who go there to have their beer after work, they look at this herd of foreigners, of strangers coming into their home brewery and chatting, spending time there. And the fact that there is people from Pontremoli vouching for these people helps bridging the difference. So again, trust is a key ingredient in the project. And the second one, I already mentioned that somehow, is conviviality. The fact that the organization was started by a group of friends, and today still there are projects to do. There is an office to be set up. There is an aperitivo to be organized, but they never forget to have an aperitivo together, to have dinner together and spend time freely. I mean, without any particular goal except being together and sharing time. So conviviality and trust, I would say, these are the two ingredients if I share from my experience.
Really good. I'd like very much the keywords when. So, Nikki, that's for you now.
Okay, I think the secret ingredient all the other speakers have expressed, it's having local connections. That is absolutely critical. Having local people who want something to happen, almost driving things. For me, the second successful ingredient in our particular case, because of the lack of trust, was actually the option. We opted to start working first with the children and the teenagers in looking at how they design spaces. And because there was far more curiosity amongst particularly the young children, they managed to engage much, much faster. But over a period of time, people then just become very curious because they saw these kids all having an amazing time and laughing and building things. So working with young people for me is almost one of the most critical things when working in communities, because, you know, they do naturally trust. And to back up Diego, trust is a really, really critical ingredient, but it's also one of the most difficult things to attain. It's a process of building trust. So that for me is one of the most challenging as well.
Okay, thank you very much. So I go just to the last question, that it's the main difficult, which was the tragedy, the problem, the big problem you found. You meet, it's better.
I can mention three aspects. The one is about housing and accommodation. So we compete with the tourism in a certain way. And I think this is a problem that most of inland area have in common, at least in Tuscany, but also in other regions, Italian regions. This is quite a problem because most of the owners of some loft houses they just prefer to have to work with a shorter period of time with tourists rather than rent their houses for longer period and place for remote workers. Also, there is a problem in housing with laws because we don't have in Italy laws that allow to have shorter rent. And so this is a national problem which we cannot address ourselves. The second problem, which is a strength, but also a weakness, I say, is the fact that we are all volunteers. This is a non-profit organization, which is good for one aspect, for some aspects, but also is a weakness because we have to compete in for our time to dedicate some of our energy, efforts, time for this kind of activities. But we all have a full-time job, so this is not easy sometimes. And the third aspect is about the recognition of this kind of project from the public administration and institution, which sometimes they have difficulty in recognizing the importance of attracting not only tourists, once again, but also temporary residents or potential long-term residents. So we are experiencing some difficulties in finding, for instance, appropriate funding to this kind of project. Also to evolve from the project stage to a consolidated experience which can be sustainable in a longer period.
Okay. Diego and Nikki.
Yeah, I'll go along with Simona in this evolution from the project stage to a stable organization. I see diversity as a challenge, not necessarily a problem, but a challenge. This growing community. The project has been very successful. It means a lot of people have joined since the beginning, and now there are many different ideas within the organization. This diversity may be a challenge sometimes for the local people, as we said already, because the local people, they are not always open to this disruption, to this change, and they may feel threatened sometimes. But within the organization itself, this growing diversity has to be somehow it has to be governed. So the governance of the growing diversity, the growing the changing issues within the organization, that is a line of work, I think, for the future of the organization.
Okay, Nikki.
I think for me at that time in that project, the greatest stumbling block was probably not local government like the village government, but the sort of level up, not quite provincial government either. but the sort of mid-level government, they were a big bloc. They wanted to control everything. And I have to be honest, this is a problem I found in England. I've seen it in Spain. It seems to be a global problem. There is a level of governance which I think feels quite insecure about the world, but feel that they have to take charge of the world, and they can just put a block on anything they feel like it, which can make life very hard.
You are right. This is universal problem everywhere. So we are perfectly in time. I say thank you to everybody. I can just open for some minutes from questions from the people that it's listening. Please open your mic and ask.
I just want to thank everyone, and the roundtable was very interesting, especially the part about ingredients. And so connection and conviviality, trust are really keywords. And I'm very proud of our experts. Thank you very much.
Okay, so seems that there are no questions. You know that there is a community, a virtual one on WhatsApp, so you can write their questions or things, and we can try to answer in a asynchronous way. And who couldn't still enter in the community, I will send a mail. Today I can just share the link now. It's a discussion group. And the link, sorry. No, I have to send by mail because I cannot find it at this moment. So if somebody of you is not registered on the somewhere as a student, as expert, or as something else, please sign minimum to the newsletter, so we have your mail and we can write to you to keep the connection, because one of the objectives of this project is not only to just connect the languages and understand the words we use, how we can decline in different point of view, but to build a network of experts, a network of organization, a network of citizens that want to understand how they can work together to help these internal areas, these rural areas, and why not the town? Because thinking in rural areas, maybe it's easiest to the easiest way to found to understand instruments to help the community into the time, for example, in a town like Venice. So thank you very much to everybody. And thank for
follow our social, follow, like, share the social, Facebook in first, Instagram when we find the password to add contents that we didn't still find, LinkedIn, and then also check news on the website, and we will upload for the end of the month the case studies and interviews and content on the website. So HiCoMa.eu and HiCoMa in the main social networks.
Okay. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And see you soon. Next appointment, it's next Tuesday, 22, to about the discussion the roundtable will be about the instruments that we can use to approach the problems you said.
And on 22nd, we will be in Romania, visiting the partner from Romania and the best practices. And so also we will share tools, instruments, and good practice from there.
Yeah, from Se Poate, that's the Romanian partner. And they have an interesting experience. They are a very young organization, young and the medium age of the people it's working in. The president has, I think, 26 years, and so they are really the focus about how to connect with the young generation. Okay, thank you very much. And if there are no question from the listener, we can say goodbye to everybody. Have a nice night.
Bye. Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Goodbye. Bye-bye. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Nikki. Thank you, Simona.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Diego. Thank you, Matteo.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.